Continuing our alternate future of the world series. As we know, a big video started in the last part. And while now this war expands into a bigger war, the first thing that happens is China declares war on Russia, but does not align with the European Federation. So we got the purple team. Well, you may think, oh, 3 sides? No. You might think, that'd be great, 3 sides, but it's not the same as you think it would be. It's 4 sides, yes, 4 sides, because I felt like it. Well, none of these nations get along with each other. Well, actually, this is not even a nation. It's a unified bloc, basically. And while right away, almost instantly, this China state decides to annex the rest of India. And is this even sustainable? Not really. With a campaign by the democratic forces being launched against the European Federation in North Africa. Which is interesting. Well, they move in. And they move into, like, the Egypt part of this empire. And they move up over here. And they do really good in this front line. Although, they don't get as far as they were hoping. This is still a big advance. But they run into issues. The European Federation realizes they have one thing to do. They decide to launch a campaign down into Arabia, which goes much better than you would expect with them capturing Riyadh, even though Riyadh I think is like over there, but it's always in a different spot for wild mapper purposes. Now, them attempting a counter-offensive, but what happens with this is they fail in this, and they wasted most of their resources now, with the rest of the alliance trying to get some forces into this region before it's too late. And well, it collapses. Well, a stalemate's created between these 2 sides. And well, let's see what China decides to do. And well, they manage to launch an offensive into Central Asia and Manchuria successfully. But China has another problem. Russian forces advancing against them too. It really leads to more of a stalemate. But as this is happening there, in that part of the front line, they decide to launch an offensive against the Western Order, as they don't have enough strength in this region, and they go in throughout Australia's northern areas. And well, they have a stalemate there because the emus hold the front lines. And yeah, I said emus hold the front lines because I felt like saying something funny. Wild comedy. As Russia tries to push back again. And the man takes St. Petersburg back from this offensive. But at the same time, using the resources they can gather in Arabia, they push back in not Ankara, Anatolia, and the Balkans. As it goes, it's like the Baltics fall, we fall. So both sides eventually lean towards where they have to freeze their advances against other occupied territories, but like that was going to happen. And well, the forces of the world order land here, and they start moving rapidly north in Sudan. That's not a big deal. And well, more islands end up taken. As they start stealing islands, they go island hopping. And they start moving deeper into Australia. Trying, and they go down the coast because like they don't want to like dehydrate to death and possibly burn. Who knows? That's the outback. Everybody's scared of the outback, I think. Except maybe somebody who lives in the middle of Siberia. I mean, they might want to go somewhere warm that's just like it, but warm. Maybe they would. As they start moving in, as they take the full country over. And then the emus declare independence. But to say no to that, they go up here, and finally Australia's surrender comes in, followed by them seizing New Zealand, with them focused on a different front line. Well, they move up into this part of Russia, and everyone's becoming totalitarian. Well, their occupation zone looks like this now. Now, their other occupation zone, they get kicked out of by Russia, with the goal to advance. So they don't fully get kicked out by Russia. And well, then comes an offensive to their territory. Wait, did I even make a difference between those two colors? Yeah, might need to be more. Yeah, that's a better color for their occupations. Well, let's fix their occupations so it's visibly not blue. Now we can go back to whatever we were doing. But hearing about the fact that there's a possible attack from them coming after them in India, they decide to create an area that they can just defend. Well, this helps them against Russia, with their goal being to push into the Caucasus. And then they put the front like this. But with the goal of the Russians is to dominate the eastern part of Europe. Now, them getting pushed back significantly. But they make some landings in southern Anatolia. And they manage to move up into the Greek parts of the European Federation. And well, as their front line goes like that, but the Russians decide to move back into the lands. But now, I think it's safe to say that these occupied territories in their territory is definitely back to theirs. Well, with the European Federation decided with the Russians, and then the front line, this all disappeared. As total frontline collapse happened, with them deciding to consider themselves the stronger nation. Oh, I colored that part in. It's not even part of the European Federation. With the Russians moving back against them, you can see where their offensive lands them. But what they didn't realize was this would fall again, but what they didn't realize was the European Federation was ready to deal with Africa. Clearly going to be against one of these. And well, nobody realized they were this strong, forcing their way into Ethiopia and South Sudan's parts of the European Federation. And well, as you can see, it goes like this. Then they do this to try to secure this. Their amount of forces overwhelming this nation, as they end up here before the stalemate's created, with the Caucasus falling. But on the other hand, they start gaining lands in the Balkans. It eventually evens out, with these guys making their offensive with the forces in Siberia making a landing over here. But during this, they get pushed back by the Russian totalitarian empire. Well, Everai likes this. This isn't looking good. But then they launch a counter-offensive. They could only do this, and not the best, but they created a stalemate. Which I think they occupy quite a bit of land, but they're able to occupy more. With them shortening the front line. Even though now it's lengthening. And that's for this area. With them pushing back. But eventually, it's going to be hard. With them deciding to flood Africa with troops that comes from South America and the North American Union. But they're not able to occupy the full areas. And well, they do this. Make 2 encirclements and they push down from here. And they reach the Atlantic. But this is where their front line starts to stabilize, about there. Well, not too much more. Both sides make a tiny bit of a counter-offensive, with the European Federation deciding to liberate the straits near there. The Russians decide to counter-offend into the Caucasus, which goes somewhat good. Then then Russia also counter-offends up here in this front, successfully against China. And they moved the front over here back a tiny bit. Russia being all but almost kicked out. And well, they get kicked like this. And this counter-offensive. And well, the democracies decide to make a counter-offensive, which they use to take the coast back. To take that chunk of the coast back and move up into the Horn of Africa. But that's pretty much... Wait, is that all? Well, let's make the lands occupied into occupied lands. See what we can all see they all occupy some lands. And well, these lands are what they ended up with at the end of today's video. But that's just because this is a big war. And it's going to take a few episodes. Parts, I mean. I don't know why I'm calling them episodes. Just part. And well, that's all for today's video. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Wild Mapper out, but not until you subscribe. Bye, guys!